Well, hey, welcome everybody. I'm Larry Dornbos. I'm Director of Vibrant Congregations, and our work is to help churches take fresh steps in ministry and mission. And we're just excited to participate in these Church Now conversations with a number of partners. Center for Church Renewal is a partner, Healthy Church Discernment Process with the Pastor Church Resources is a partner, Luminex, Resonate Global Mission Church Planting, and Pillar Church. We're all working together to get the word out and to participate in these. And with this one, we are going to be making available to you, it'll be in chat, David Fitch's new book on the church. And you can sign up to get a copy of the book. You can also sign up to participate in a study that goes with that book that we're going to do, just a book conversation, learning a little bit about the church, what it is, why it matters, why it exists, those kind of things. And so you're invited to just follow that link and sign up either for the book or for the book and for the study. The book is going to be provided via Vibrant and also Resonate Church Planting. So it's a gift from us to you for that. And just one other thing, and that is a ministry opportunity. We're working in partnership with some of you may know it, movement.org, which is Movement Day and those kind of things. And one of their partners is something called Safe Families. And Safe Families works with families before their children enter the foster system to keep the kids out of foster care by providing support from a Christian community to a family. And so if that sounds like something your church would like to explore, you can go to our Vibrant Congregations website, to the resources section there, and you can find a link to that. So the book and a possible ministry opportunity. Just a couple of housekeeping details before we start. Just again, a reminder, be gracious to us and mute yourselves. David Fitch will begin with some conversation around what he sees going on right now in our culture. And then we'll be going to a time of Q&A. And so if you have a question you'd like to ask David, just pop that into the chat and we'll pick it up from the chat and relay it over to him and allow him to answer. And when that's finished, we'll give him about 5 minutes or so to kind of do a close up piece for us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Scuddy, who is Resonate Church Planting Guru. And he's going to lead the rest of the conversation. Kevin?
Great. Thanks, Larry. This is a wonderful opportunity to get different people and different voices together to learn. So I've always appreciated these Church Now gatherings. I'm really excited that David could join us this morning. I pulled this off the shelf, David, but this book a number of years ago, The Great Giveaway, was very influential in my life, and then end of evangelicalism and a number of other books that David has authored, led me to attend Northern Seminary and get a doctorate of contextual theology with David. He is a church planting practitioner. He is planted, he is planting, he is pastoring, he is involved in mission in his local neighborhood and context. He's also a theologian. So he's, in my opinion, a classic pastor theologian. It's a great opportunity to learn from him this morning. He teaches at Northern, runs the Church Planting Institute at Northern Seminary in Chicago. Is involved with groups like Fresh Expressions as well. And so, yeah, excited for David to join. Please sign up for the book, for the free book and the book discussion. I think that'll be an excellent learning for all of us. David, I want to turn it over to you and give you some time here to, maybe further introduce yourself, but tell us a little bit about what you're seeing from your seat in culture today, what's going on there, what's going on with the church, and so on and so forth. So let's turn it over to you and let you riff for a little bit.
All right, thank you, Kevin, and Larry, and everybody for having me. I'm also, by the way, an ordained pastor in the Christian Missionary Alliance, which is kind of like a mainstream evangelical denomination, although we have these Pentecostal holiness roots to us. So anyways, that tells you a little bit more about me. What I'd like to just start off by saying is, a perfect storm by definition, happens when you have a combination of adverse meteorological factors happen all at one time, and you have this monster, disruptive, violent storm, kind of like Hurricane Sandy on the East Coast. What was that, 5-10 years ago? And they said it was a once in 700-year storm kind of thing. Well, this past year, you could say 2020, you could say was a perfect storm of combined events that's led us to a massive cultural upheaval. I think we got to come to grips with this. I think we got to understand just how significant this is. You know, going into 2020, we were witnessing the moral failure of some significant high profile Christian pastors and leaders. And I don't know in your circles, but in my circles, there was just a disillusionment with the church leadership. And then we saw like this massive awakening of an awareness of racial injustice in this country, which just started these mass demonstrations all over the country in support of Black persons protesting certain systemic issues with police violence and other things. And people were maybe asking, you know, where's the church in this? Is the church even relevant to the injustices of the world? And then, then by the way, you had the Trump administration, and regardless of whatever side you were on there, the alignment of, I use quotes, the white evangelicals with the Trump administration, I mean, it just left a lot of people under the age of 30, maybe under the age of 35, just shaking their heads going, I have had it with church. I don't know your context, but specifically, I see we have a bunch of Canadians across the border up there. Welcome, all you Canadians. I have a special warm spot for Canadians. But all that to say, I don't know what your context is in relation to all these things, but I was sitting with a pastor about 6 months ago, and we had pastored 30 years ago together. And he was grieving the fact that all of his 3 children, now in their 20s, had walked away from the faith. And we were talking about all these factors. And now you have COVID-19, where everything we've become used to calling church, everything we call church got disrupted. In some cases, shut down. Like the big gatherings on Sunday, or the programs to disciple people or minister to the hurting, or even the way we were doing justice ministries. It just got shut down or put on broadcast platforms, Zoom platforms, and now across the country, I'm hearing, well, participation seems to be waning on our broadcast programs on Sunday morning. What does that mean? I'm also hearing, well, we've got more people coming to church on broadcast medium, but they're spread out like never before, 150 miles from our town. What are we going to do with this? Everything that pastors got used to thinking about in terms of our own work and our own satisfaction and our own self-worth, frankly, is been put up for grabs. And so, like, really, folks, if nothing else today, can we take a few moments and just admit that we're in a mammoth perfect storm here, all of us. Everything is being or has been disrupted. I don't know. There's no playbook for this. We haven't had something like this in over 100 years. Should we just assume that we're going to pick up where we left off a year ago, last March? Should we just assume we can go back to the way things were, before COVID-19? What are we going to do with the broadcast services? What are we going to do with relationships with people we've met on Facebook but live 200 miles away? What are we going to do with our buildings? How are we going to, is discipleship on Zoom a good thing or a bad thing? Yeah, I mean, come on. We don't have a playbook for this. How are we going to lead? I hate to disillusion anybody, but I don't have any answers here. I don't have a magic bullet. I don't have the answers to the questions. But I have a suggestion that I'm putting out there for all of us, including me. Now is not the time to start planning for a return to normal. Instead, I think we should see this as a unique kind of a moment, cultural moment, to lead our communities through asking the big questions all over again. What is the church? What are we doing here, anyways? And why? Why the church? Why is this so essential? Why do we even need to do this? And then if we get that far, how? How do we organize ourselves? How are we going to look at our organization? Kevin was talking about this little book here. It's like thin. It's like 20,000 words, I should say. Almost said pages. 20,000 words or less, leading us through the what, the why, and the how all over again. I'd like to suggest to us, now could be the moment. I don't know what it's going to look like in every situation here in this room, this Zoom room. But I think we have an opportunity to lead our churches back to who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're going to do it, and reshape something for an engagement of the kingdom of God. I'll just go through these 3 questions really quickly, and then we'll open it up for Q&A or whatever Kevin wants to do. But let's take the question, what is the church? Well, I want to suggest, if you look at Acts chapter 2, the best text on the church, 41 through 46. Let me get my glasses. It says, they devoted themselves to apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and prayers. They had practices. They were a community of practices that gathered a people into the living presence of Christ, the risen Lord. When you look at Paul's words that he uses to describe the church, the body of Christ, he talks about members participating, all the members practicing the gifts and their life together. The ecclesia, the word that's used the most often in Acts and Pauline epistles for the church, it means practices of discerning what God is doing and leading our people. And so the focus, I think, should be on practices. When we're all in Christendom and we're all together in one place and everybody's a Christian and we don't have to worry about anything else and everybody's leading a good life and we have no problems like that ever exists. But we probably focus on beliefs. What do we believe here? This is going to be our unity, our function, our bringing us together. I want to suggest practices. The practices of the Lord's table, the practices of preaching the gospel, the practice of being with the poor, the practice of reconciliation, of being with children, of the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and of course, the practice of prayer. Can we lead our people into these core practices that shape us into the living presence of Christ, not only in us, among us, but at work all around us. Practices, so the question is, can we ask, what are the practices, the indispensable practices of our life together that are core to who we are? And can we lead our people into them again? If we get that far, the second question was why? Why do we need to do this? Why do we need church? Why can't we just turn on a Zoom call once a week and read a book and get by with my Christian life that way? Well, I think if practices is the answer to the what question, I think the why question is answered by presence, because this is the way God works. Our God is a God of love, not coercion. He is a God that works through his presence. For sure, he gets things done indirectly through government and other things, but the way he's going to redeem us and the world is through his presence in and through Jesus Christ as Lord, through the Holy Spirit. And I think to kind of riff off of Charles Taylor's book, The Secular Age, and his idea of the immanent frame, and the idea that we have just architected God out of our lives. We're not aware of his presence at work in our lives. We need to understand God not only works this way through his presence, he changes the world this way, but he requires a people to manifest, make visible his presence. This, I think, we need an imagination for the way the presence of God works in and among us. Can we lead people through the why question all over again? God requires a people. He chooses to work through a people to make manifest his presence, the power, the miracles, the transformation of his presence. Can we call people back to a deep understanding of God's presence by the Spirit through Jesus Christ? And I want to emphasize, not just working in us, but among us as the church and all around us. And then the last question, and I'll end with this, Kevin, and maybe we can have a little discussion. How do we do this? If we get our people through the what and the why, how does the how take shape? And I want us to remember in Acts 2:46, says, day by day, as they spent much time in the temple, which was the center of God's presence in Jerusalem, they broke bread at home, or as one redaction says, from house to house in the neighborhood. They practiced, they ate food with glad and generous hearts. They praised God. They did all these practices. And then it says they had the goodwill of all the people, or they found favor, presence with people outside the church. And I say to all of us, and this is something I sketch out quite extensively in the book, Faithful Presence, that the church is not just one place. Like I call it the close circle of his presence, which was the temple for the first church. We have that close circle, most of us on Sunday morning, where we're all discerning and present to Jesus, and we're all eating at the table and being reconciled one to another. But the presence of God doesn't stay in that close circle. It doesn't stay on Sunday. It says day by day, right? And so they went from house to house in the neighborhood. I call that the dotted circle. That's the place where we gather in our homes, or in the bowling alley, or a fire pit in Westmont where I live. We have fire pits. and we share life together. And the discernment level is not as intense as the Lord's table on Sunday morning. So we have neighbors come by and they see how we live our lives together, working things out through all these practices, reconciliation, eating together, being present to one another and what the Spirit's doing among us. That's the dotted circle in the neighborhood. That's the house fellowship typically. But then it says they had favor with all the people, and I call that the half circle. When we go and we be among the hurting and the broken, and we go there as a guest, and we say, Jesus is present here too. And we stay long enough to bear witness to what he's doing. The church is not one place, it's three places. I think that's the answer to the how question. Three places, day by day. And the Lord added to the number those who were being saved. Jesus is always working in the world, saving people and calling them to themselves. He just needs a church to be present and recognize it. So can we ask the what, the why, and the how all over again? I've used the 3 P's. Every good preacher has an alliteration in his sermon. First P is practices. That answers the what. The second P is presence. This is how God works. That's the why question. He requires a people to be present to and manifest his presence. And then thirdly, places. 3 places is the how question. How can we organize our lives as the church? Not the programs all centered in one place, but in 3 places as a whole way of life. I got a closing little epilogue in this book. What is the church and why does it exist? Where I go through the how, the what, the why, and the how. And I say, as the sun sets on Christendom in the West, that's a great, closing line, if I do say so myself. Everywhere churches face disruption and decline, and the questions stir among us. Will we be faithful to the call of Jesus to be his church in North America? Will we set about asking the what, the why, and the how questions of the church all over again? That's my suggestion for all of us today as we seek to lead our people into a renewed understanding and faith in what God's doing in our lives and in the world. All right, Mr. Kevin.
David, good stuff, man. I want to encourage everybody to, if you have any questions, just feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll get them out and present them to David. Love your stuff. Question on, maybe you talk about being present a lot. Obviously, what does presence mean in an online digital age? Can we be present online? Can that be a neighborhood? Or maybe another way to look at it is, what is authentic human relationships in this time of disruption that we're in? Because I know, at least on the church planting side, we get a lot of questions. I get a lot of questions about, hey, can we have an online church? Can we support an online church plant? So on and so forth. So that'd be one question. Maybe a second follow-up, just to kind of get us rolling, is, let's say you're pastoring a church you've been there for 25 years and the church has been there maybe for 50. And this whole idea of actually moving from belief to practice, with our good reformed mind, we want to make sure that our beliefs are in order. And the idea of getting out in a neighborhood is pretty scary. So what is authentic neighborhood and relationship in this digital question? And then how do we move as an established church that's been around for a while into this neighborhood thing and practice thing that you're talking about?
All right. Well, as I said at the outset, I do not have all the answers to all the questions. I could just give you a little bit of what I'm seeing in my own pastoral ministry and what I'm talking to other people about. Here's the general gist on the first question that I'm seeing. I am first sensing a little bit of surprise at how much good stuff we've gotten done on Zoom. I was just talking to a Quebec Canada, of course, for those of you who don't know the geography of Canada. By the way, you Canucks out there, I grew up in Hamilton, Ontario, home of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Anyways, I was talking to a Quebec pastor, and he was so surprised at how much Zoom has opened space for people to come into their church who would normally not ever darken the door of a church building. And so I think we should be, I think we should look for things that have gone well on Zoom. But having said all that, I know in my church and other churches, there is a deeper longing to be together, a deep, deep, almost angst or pain, longing for the day when we can be together as a gathered community, hugging, sharing, connecting. Physical space has not been devalued in this time. It has been upped in value during this time. And so I think we have to navigate that. Everybody has to navigate that. I don't think we throw the whole Zoom calls, Zoom everything out the door, but yet I don't think we give up. I think we sense what God's telling us about the value of social spaces where the Spirit can work. Now, the other question you asked, by the way, if anybody's got anything to say here at this point to help us understand this, it would be greatly appreciated. So pop in, but just let me make one comment and then we can open it up if Kevin wants to. I just think we're so disrupted at this time that it might be the occasion to get people to ask these questions all over again. What is it that we're doing and why? We might lose a few people. There's a piece I've got in the works for Christianity Today on increased density, decreased numbers. We might have lower numbers, but the density of people wanting to commit and submit to Jesus and his presence in their lives and in the world could be really significantly upped. And that's the spaces God needs to explode a work of his kingdom. And my only thought is, I think we've got an opportunity here to ask these questions and lead people into something new. And I do give discussion questions in this little book, and Faithful Presence does give stuff on how we've actually located people and helped to locate people in these third spaces of mission. I don't think you can be a Christian, by the way. I don't think you can successfully, that's probably not the right word. I don't think you can flourish and grow as a Christian without a regular presence among those who are lost and broken, because this is where God speaks to us and transforms us, but also uses this space to bring people to himself. And if you're not in that, well, you're kind of living a old, crusty, stale, dull, boring, insignificant faith. And the question is it worth doing anyways? So with that, I'll open up space for questions, so forth. By the way, can I just tell one more story that maybe might clarify what I'm saying? Sorry. Before COVID, I found my place of mission at this bar called Uptown Bar in Westmont, where I live. It's a very blue collar bar. By the way, I grew up on the east side of Hamilton, which was a steel town in my day, and I was blue collar. I'm a blue collar guy, and these folks are contract workers working in various places. They get off on the train and they go there and they go to unwind and have a beer. And I just decided I'm going to as part of my discipleship, I'm going to spend 3 to 4 hours on Thursdays after 3 o'clock, because I get off early on Thursdays, all the way to 6 or 7 o'clock, and just be challenged by people's lives there. And I'd pray, Lord, be present with me. And 2 or 3 other people from Peace of Christ Church, the church where I pastored, joined me. And we were just having a very flourishing time. And I'm getting emails from those people saying, when are we going back? It's like a COVID petri dish right now there, because everybody rebels from wearing masks and it's crazy. So I don't feel real comfortable going there back yet. But I just want to say, as part of my discipleship, and I encourage everybody in our church to find a place of mission, a homeless shelter, a place where homeless folk hang out. We have an immigration services at our church. Can you hang out and make people feel comfortable? We have a common closet where people gather to share clothes. And we've just found places of mission. And I just want to say to everybody, these are the places where people are going to get saved. people are going to come to Christ in droves. But we got to be there long enough, patient enough to see him at work, not impose ourselves on people. All right, over to you, Kevin.
Thanks, David. You got me all fired up. So I appreciate that. If anybody's got questions, put them in the chat again. One question that was presented here to everybody is from Amy, is how do you, if you are a pastor of, again, these established churches and your people are anxious, so you tell them to go and get out and, go drink some beers and hang out at the bar with some people. And a lot of people are like, that's just not me. I can't do that. It makes it almost worse, right? I mean, we can't be together in church, and now I got to go do this other thing that I've never done. And holy cow, I'm flipping out here. I just don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And my kids are not going to church now, and I don't know what to do. How would you maybe counsel, and maybe I know you address this maybe a little bit in some of the books, but how would you counsel that pastor, right? The church planter guy. I mean, this is the most exciting time I've had in church in forever. It's like we're starting the whole thing over again. I'm loving every minute of it, right? But I think some of the established church pastors are ones that have there's some anxiety there, and I think that's what Amy's trying to get at, is how do we address that anxiety with our groups?
By the way, I see somebody here is amping up True City in Hamilton, Ontario. Way to go, folks. I'm into that, what they do there. Kevin, couple of comments, and then I'd just like to hear what people are thinking. So this is a time of disruption, but you can't like install a new software program and expect everything to change. It's a cultural shift. So I think the best place to start, excuse me, is sitting around a table, 10 to 12 people, every Friday night. Friday night's my favorite night. By the way, Ken, I'm Christian Missionary Alliance. We never drink more than 2 beers, never more than 2. In case this is a recording and my denominational authorities are listening, 2. Okay, but anyways, it opens space for kingdom. When we eat food, we have a beer or a glass of wine, or if you're an abstainer, Fresca. And we are able to pray and invite the presence of God. I give a few examples in Faithful Presence. And then we sort out our lives. And then, so that's going to take, for me, it took a year. Sorry to be discouraging on this. It took a year to get that group to where we were comfortable with one another, where we were sharing our lives together, where we were praying for our own lives and our neighborhood together. That began for us a journey. Now we have a little pamphlet that we use at our church to help people locate where they can be in mission. Not everybody is going to be comfortable going to Uptown Bar. I know that for a fact. By the way, I'm a hockey coach at the YMCA. Not everybody, most people in my church don't even know what a hockey puck is. I'm not going to ask them to go coach hockey at the YMCA. No, everybody's got a thing they do. Like one of our families is into these games, these complicated games. There's this place in town called Hot Sauce Games. By the way, you get across the table from somebody and playing one of these games, people that'll never talk to you, after like a few moves, like an hour into the game, they start telling you about their lives. Okay, but that's not me. I frankly hate board games. Everybody's got a thing. There's a guy who's a high school teacher in our church, and I said, George, where do you grade your papers? Where do you do your prep work in the morning? I either do it at home or in my office at the school. I go, why don't you just try this coffee shop over here? It opens at 6 a.m. Why don't you try doing it there 2 mornings a week and just be open to the people you're going to meet in that space? A laundromat in town. I know somebody who just does their laundry at the laundromat. They have their own washer and dryer downstairs in the basement, but they have chosen to go do their laundry at the laundromat. gets them time with people who are hurting. Everyone just find one place. My mother, 93 years old, young, 93 years young. She does the sewing with those patches and stuff, quilting. There's quilting clubs. My mom, you couldn't drag me to a quilting club. That's where my mom relates to people. The lostness and the hurting of people is everywhere in our town. We have a common closet. Not everybody is an apostle. We have this woman named Becky. She's an apostle. She started the common closet. She got it on Facebook. Now it's a thing, and she needs helpers, people who can be present. So she's got people, not all of them from our church. She got people from the outside the church gathering with her. And so not everyone's going to start the club or the common closet, but we're going to join together and help others who are initiators. That's a key thing. Not everybody can go into a bar and feel comfortable. But Lori, my friend, after I kind of led the way, said, can I come too? Now let me tell you a little story. I'm there sitting there for 3 months. I know like 4 people. Lori comes in 2 weeks. She knows the whole bar. And my best friend, who's a hockey player at the bar, doesn't even talk to me anymore. He just talks to Lori. She's got the gift of evangelism. And I got the gift of apostleship. So this is the kind of things we need to think about as we call people into these third spaces, these third circles. It's a whole cultural cultivation. Go slow, teach people slow. Lots of cups of coffee with people once the restaurant's open again.
Any other questions for Dave?
Kevin, you are muted.
All right, said the host had muted me, Larry. So I was like, hey, that's fine. So if anybody's got a question, ask. Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat and ask David. David, how, as we're waiting maybe for some other people to engage, is how important is it because we have many or mostly pastors and leaders on here, for those leaders to be the first in their congregations to lead into these practices? Meaning, what's the distinction between I'm gonna give you Fitch's book and I'm gonna live what's saying here? Can it happen without the leader doing the practice themselves?
No, it's got to start with us. I often tell people, because I think it's I think it's an important question. I'm in this church of, it's 100 years old, deeply ensconced in the habits of Christendom, going to church, going to prayer meeting. If you have a divorce issue, go to the church, to a divorce group. Everything is at the church, deeply ensconced. Don't ask me to go talk to somebody outside of church. I was once in a church where we were leading the elders through a discussion like this, and the pastor said, well, where do we start? And one of the elders raised her hand and said something like, I've been at this church for 35 years. I've served faithfully doing this and this and this, but I haven't talked to a non-Christian in 30 years, and I'm not going to start now. Well, come on. I had someone last night ask me if I was going to try to convince somebody of something, and they're in my age group. That means they're over 60. I go, I don't think I'm going to start there. I don't think I'm going to use my time there. Unless I'm invited, I don't think that's where I'm going to focus my time. There's a lot of people disrupted in their faith. A lot of people disrupted by even thinking about church. And I think those disruptions are the places where we have the opportunity to lead into something different. Allow Jesus to lead into something different. But having said that, I would start. I have done this in my own life. I can't live without a big table in my house, even if it clogs up the whole dining room. I've got to have a big table. And there we start. And we invite 10 to 12 people. I remember the first group I had, this is over 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. It took a whole year. I had to go through 50 people, inviting 50 people to get 8 who would come and meet at dinner. And we'd slowly cultivate, and we'd do 3 things. First, we'd gather around the kitchen and we'd say a prayer of thanksgiving and invite the Holy Spirit to be present as we eat. It's called the epiclesis in the Roman Catholic liturgy. Jesus, be present here in the bread and the cup. Jesus, be present as we eat. And then we would just sit around and learn how to talk to one another, learn how to listen to one another. If Joe would start talking too much about himself and making a show of himself, I would go, Joe, I think we should ask Judy a question now. We'd slowly learn how to listen to one another and tend to the Spirit at work among us. Then we'd go into the second hour after we finished eating, normally when the coffee would come and the brownies. There was a woman who made the most incredible brownies. The brownies and the coffee. And I would start with a question. It would come from the sermon, or it would just come from our work. Where do you see God at work in your suffering this week? And we'd start processing for the next hour. Things would come out slowly. And then the last half an hour, we'd say, well, it's time to go to prayer. And we just gather in the living room. And we'd pray for everything we'd heard. We'd pray for a neighborhood. And over 6 months to a year, God would do some amazing things in people's lives. It ministered to me, the pastor, more than probably it ministered to anybody else, because I got so encouraged, affirmed, and met through prayer in the presence of the Spirit. People would find out, oh, what's going on? What's going on at Fitch's house? I heard somebody with shingles got healed. We had a guy with shingles once. All you need is one miracle, and people start going, hey, I want some of that. This is the way God works. You got to make space for him to work. And then when he works, people are going, whoa, I can't believe what I just saw. And they want to be part of it. And another group starts. And then we learn that this same presence that is at work around the table is at work in Uptown Bar, is at work in the homeless shelter, is at work in the local McDonald's, is at work in the town hall ordinance committee, even though there's some big time racists on that committee, talking about my own town. And God wants to work there too. So I would start with the house fellowship, Kevin. That's my one suggestion, and lead from there.
No, that's good. That's good. Got a question that came in. A couple of questions came in on the chat. One of them was, hey, I'm paraphrasing. We love the idea of patient presence, right? But is there a time to move on to a new or more ready mission field? So at what point do you say, hey, I've been patient, I've been present, but there ain't nothing going on here, so I'm moving. Does that happen? I mean, what does that look like?
Yes, I mean, Jesus did it all the time, right? Or I shouldn't say he did it all the time, but he famously encouraged his missionaries to slap the sandals together, the dust off their feet. He said once in Matthew, I can't remember where, that he could not do any miracles here. The people weren't open to him, so he left. But this is what I think COVID-19 and the last year of crisis kind of offers us. Everybody has been disrupted. Everybody is asking questions. And yes, there are some who just want to go back to the way it was. Let them be. Let them be. My mother is 93 years old. There's this retirement system in Fort Myers that the Christian Missionary Alliance, my denomination, started. You go to a church service there, there's not one person under the age of 70 there. And they play the piano like it was in 1958. the revival pianos. Okay, it reminds me so much of when I was a little boy in the 60s going to church, and I'm going, oh, this feels so good. Well, the fact of the matter is those people are not going to minister to anybody except themselves until from here until glory. I am not going to go in there and tell these people, you should be ashamed of yourselves. All you care about is yourselves. No, let it be. Especially my mom. Let her be 93 years old. Give her a break, Kevin. Don't start hitting her over the head saying, you got to be missional. Although my mom is pretty missional. But having said that, yeah, we all have to make those kind of decisions. Earlier I said it took a year. I would ask some people 3, 4, 5 times, invite them over to my house for dinner. I started white flagging it around the 4th or 5th time until I finally found 8 who were interested, who could explore with me what it would be like to share table fellowship. We all got to make those decisions, folks. You might not even have in your church 10 people. So you might have to go into your neighborhood and gather them together. Sure. Not as future members of your church, but as people that are going to be committed to the presence of Jesus and exploring what God wants to do in this block, in this neighborhood, which God will use perhaps to renew your church, which is stuck in 1952.
Sure. So here's a question that came in, and it's a big one, is, what do you imagine the institutional church will look like in 2050? Because what I hear you saying is, my goodness, you're out doing these practices. I don't know if we need people to go to Northern Seminary and get an MDiv, or definitely a doctorate, right? I don't know if we need a church planning organization, a mission organization, because we kind of give them money. I mean, they don't need money for this. I mean, what's going on? I mean, are we going to have denominations and institutional churches and professional clergy in 30 years if we, I mean, Belgic Confession 26, 28, whatever it is for us, right? True church is preaching of the word, the administrative and sacraments, and the discipline, and that's very institutional. All this stuff seems like it's going away. You're going to be retired by that point. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? But we're all going to be out of jobs, aren't we? If we follow this, this is concerning to me.
Seems to be a significant leap, Kevin, from anything I've said, but
I know, but I get the emails later, right? I mean, where's are you just throwing the baby out with the bathwater here? Fitch?
No. By the way, in this little book, folks, I talk about what happened in the first 150 years of the church as a community of practices to the Nicaea Creed and the organization or the institutionalization of the church, which, by the way, once Constantine sponsored Christianity, you had, I believe, according to Rodney Stark, something like 25 million new Christians in 78 years. And they barely were a million. I don't think there were a million at the start. So you had to organize quickly. Nobody wants to bash the Roman church for organizing and putting the priests in charge. I don't know that they had another option. But what happens is we go to coercion and hierarchical authority, and beliefs are more important than practices. And this worked. But sadly, what happens is if the culture changes, and I believe the last 50 years especially have been some of the most significant cultural upheaval for white Euro Christians they've ever experienced for 500 years. For white Euro Christians, not the Black church is another story as to what they've been going through for the last 50 years. But for us white people, I'm not including everybody in here that is not white. I'm just talking for those of us who are white, we have gotten the crap kicked out of us. and there's just no other way to talk about it, but we have to go back to practices to reshape an authentic expression of the gospel. And I am asking my own denomination, they're not listening to me, at least in the United States. No offense, I'm not offended by not being listened to. It is what it is. And I don't expect everybody just to listen to me just because I say something, but I would like my denomination to, which has been a mission organization overseas since its founding, I would like it to be a mission organization now in one of the most lost countries in the world. Canada and the US, depending on how you gauge it, are more lost than Africa or Latin America. And so we need to be mission societies. I don't believe, by the way, that organizational structures are going to go away. I just think they're going to change. And I do think church planting, by the way, needs a different way to think about money and approach. I tell all my MA students, I think seminary education is more important now than it's ever been because of the cultural challenges we face that we just don't know how to think through. And but having said that, I ask every MA grad to go become a plumber. Get your apprentice license and be a plumber, because you will not be able to make a full-time living, chances are, for the next 50 years being a pastor. You will have to have other skills to make a living. I wish I had become a plumber. My wife would be so much more happier with me if I knew what I was doing around the house. Why not? Nobody has one single career for the next 45 years of their life anymore. I learned financial services, and by the way, that's where I really got saved. But I think we all should have a second or third option. But the church and its organization is still valuable. It's just going to have to change. It's really important, actually, if we're going to engage our post-Christendom cultures for mission. Anybody got anything they want to say to me, disagree with me, or challenge me, or say I've got a better solution, Fitch? I would really love to hear from people, Kevin, if they got anything they want to say.
Unmute yourself and go for it, y'all. Here's a question that came in on the chat, and anybody can interrupt me and ask, but is it time to go to smaller group churches like the disciple-making movement principles, get away from buildings? I mean, that's kind of what you're saying here. Is there a place for church buildings and that kind of church expression? Yeah. Are we still going to sing? Well, Shine Jesus Shine is an 80s thing. When I was, are we still going to sing Chris Tomlin songs and do that sort of thing? Or I mean, what's up with that? Are skinny jeans going to matter? I mean, what do we do? Is there? That's kind of what I'm getting from Roger Boyd here. Is like, are just smaller groups? Is that basically what we're going to be looking at? And anybody can jump in.
Yeah. First of all, it's a contextual question. Buildings. We have a building. It was given to us. We called it the Commons. It's become a place where multiple different activities happen in our town, in our suburb. But we do worship there. I think, to be clear, the sacred corporate worship is essential to the Christian to the formation of the church in mission. It is and I believe it's a mistake to think we're going to all go to house churches only. This is why I emphasize 3 places. This is the pattern of the church. By the way, it's not just me. Andy McGowan wrote a book, Yale church historian, called Early Christian Worship, where he talks about the 3 circles. This is life. It's no longer, when you're in Christendom, you can organize everything into a central building, make all the practices convenient, because everybody's a Christian and everybody's not challenged by the culture. We are challenged in terms of the racial issues of our day, the sexuality issues of our day, the political issues of our day, the spiritual formation issues of our day, the issues of money, greed, economics of our day. We're challenged on all fronts by a culture. And therefore, the minute you send somebody out the door on Sunday morning from worship, you're sending them into a mess. So we must have multiple places of shaping people's lives into the living presence of God and recognize we're in this for mission. We're in this by we're in this for mission. I mean, we are not. When I was in Canada in the 60s and 70s, I didn't know half my teachers were Christians. I still get emails from them. Are you Dave Fitch that went to Glenbrae Middle School in Hamilton, Ontario? Yes, I didn't even know you were a Christian. My soccer coach. I didn't know he was a Christian. Nowadays, you go into school, and it's a very different, challenging place. I send my 16-year-old to high school, public high school, and the challenges he's getting on all fronts. He must have places to process that. And it can't just be with dad, but it's got to be with dad, but it's got to be in the other circles of our lives. We've got to make ourselves a way of life again, not just an irrelevant service that happens on Sunday that's enclosed from the rest of the world.
Larry?
Yeah, thank you for being with us, Fitch. Appreciate it a lot. And Kevin for leading that conversation. And again, just that reminder that you can get his newest book by following the link and asking for it and signing up for a conversation if you'd like to around the book, around these practices and ideas that we're talking about today. Next month, we will have Kristen Dumais with us, and she will be talking about her book, Jesus and John Wayne. And so really looking forward to that conversation as well, talking about evangelicalism and how it's been impacted in so many different ways. But again, good to see you all and have a great afternoon. Talk to you later.